Okay, so I'm here with Helen Emmet from Experian. We're going to have a conversation today about careers, how Helen got to where she is at the moment, kind of what she does at the moment in her role, and then hopefully there'll be some kind of good advice and tips you can pick up to apply to your own career as you start to leave the college and move forward into that world of employment. So I'll start you off with a really easy one. What is your job title and what does that involve, please?
No, so that's fine. So thank you first of all for inviting me to speak to everybody. Really excited to do that today. So my role is Senior Vice President of Global Finance Services Operations, which is possibly the longest role title. But basically what I do within Experian, I'm responsible for all our finance transaction processing globally. So I have over 500 people located in Costa Rica, Bulgaria, Malaysia, Brazil, and some people in North America and Nottingham as well, doing finance for the whole of Experian. I'm responsible for them. That's my role.
Wow, okay, so it is quite a sort of wide and involved job there, isn't it, across different continents? And
Yes.
I can imagine that's probably very time consuming, but probably quite rewarding as well, I imagine.
Absolutely. Do you know, I think what I really love about it is you just really get a feel for everybody's culture, ways of working, different personalities. And, to be honest, the best thing about my job is I get to travel to these places. I love traveling, and it's been absolutely fantastic to visit these countries and see the people as well.
Okay, brilliant. And as you say that, you're getting to kind of touch on different groups in different countries, different cultures, and then maybe on a sort of kind of smaller level within the company. Can you tell me a bit about how your department fits into the company as a kind of wider thing, and the different jobs and departments and roles that are available within the organisation as a whole, please?
Yeah, sure. So within, if I think about Experian Finance and my team, we're very much responsible for what we call the transaction processing initially within Experian. So that would be things like supplier payments, making sure people's expenses are paid, payroll, collecting cash from our customers, and doing all the accounting work for Experian. So I look at us as, although I manage this huge team, and it's around 50% of the finance, actually we're an extension of all the finance teams in each of the countries globally. How we fit in, we in our group finance organisation. So I'm part of I report into the global CFO for finance services. So he looks after my team. He has our development centre finance. So those are centres in all the different locations, supporting our technology teams, but also our digital transformation teams as well. And by digital transformation, this is where we're looking to move to more automation, new technical products, moving away from Excel into Tableau as an example. We use robotics within finance. So it's quite a variety of work, and that's how I sit. I kind of sit in the middle. But where I also sit is I actually sit with our leaders, our finance leaders as well. So as part of the CFO's team, to really think about how we run finance and how we make it better for everybody within the organisation too.
Great. Okay. So we're starting to hear a little bit more then about kind of, the ins and outs of your actual role. So if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about, and this may kind of fall into two bits, often when I speak to people now, if you could tell us a bit about your kind of typical day in your working life, if there is one at the moment, and maybe just expand a little bit about what that was like sort of pre-COVID and post-COVID as well, please.
Sure. I know when I thought about this, there's definitely a pre-COVID and a post-COVID, but a lot of the work that I do is the same. So what I'll touch on is kind of pre-COVID. So, and I think it's useful to know, so every 6 weeks I actually, I traveled, so I spend a week in one of the countries that I look after. What I do there, so part of my role is to make sure that is to meet everybody, to do what we call all hands sessions and talk about what our vision is, what our expectations are, talk about what's happening in the company to really get a feel for that. Meet some of our teams as well, understand what their career plans are, and talk through a lot of our continuous improvement projects as well. So where we're putting in robots, where we're looking at automation. So that would be one of my typical weeks when I'm traveling. In a normal week, and it's probably pretty similar to now, my days really getting my children out of the house. One of the key things to school. But I spend a lot of my time in meetings. I think what's really interesting is you get more senior, I feel like I don't do anything anymore. It's more around making sure I've got the right people in the right places and they've got the tools, the technology, the processes in place to help them do the activity. So, but also helping out. So today, just as we come on this call, I have to make sure that we've got the right amount of money in the bank to pay for an acquisition and approve that to go through, or I'll be challenging my teams around some of the collections targets, making sure we've got enough cash in the organisation. So lots of different types of activities. And so I kind of see myself as almost the conductor of an orchestra, making sure that everybody's doing the right thing at the right time.
Great. Okay. So just to step back a little bit then, obviously we're talking about what it is you're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about kind of, your personal history? So maybe about your education, any previous roles you had to get to this point, how you came to join the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Newcastle, and to be honest, I didn't know what I wanted to do at school. And during my A levels, so I did very general A levels. I did English, French, economics, and general studies. I then went and did a general degree because, again, still didn't know what to do in IT and management studies. Mm-hmm. What I did know is I wanted a job and I wanted to earn money. So and I wanted to learn. So I was really fortunate. I got a graduate job on leaving university at Boots, and that's why I moved to Nottingham. And through that, I worked in lots of different finance roles in different industries, and did my SEMA training while I was at Boots. So that was really good, really great insight into the world of work. Really tough moving from looking after yourself, being a student, into work. It is challenging, it is scary, but actually there was a lot of support as I moved through. After 4 years, I wanted to do something different. So I went and became a management consultant. And basically that's going out and doing advisory to big companies. So I was lucky enough to work in Germany for Allianz, around the UK, did a lot of work with the Ministry of Defence, helping with their budgeting systems. But I was away from home all the time. So as much as I love travel, I want to be at home a bit more, and joined Group 4 as a commercial accountant, business partner, doing pricing, commercial contracts, making sure that our security guards got to the right place and got paid at the right time. And after a couple of years, there was no career progression. So I moved to Experian, and I've been here for 15 years. So I've done a huge number of roles. So I joined as planning and budgeting as part of our group. After a year, actually all of those roles, when we demerged, we were part of the GUS group with Burberry and Argos. That all moved to London. I didn't want to move to London. And to be honest, I was pregnant, so that didn't help either. So I decided to do something else. So I joined a shared service centre, which was very small, doing payments and financial accounting. And then that organisation grew and grew. We moved all our EMEA country work into Nottingham. So I did all of that, and then grew and grew my role to my role that I am today. And I think, if I reflect on my career, I've never had a real career plan at all. I know a lot of people have these 5-year, 10-year plans. I've never had that. For me, it's around, does the job look interesting? Am I learning? And do I think I can add value? And that's what I've always focused on as I've gone through the career. So that's why it's jumped around quite a lot, because I've always learning and want to do something different.
Yeah, great. And I think that's something we hear from quite a lot of the people that we speak to here, is that learning never stops. Obviously you're at college, you're at school, and you're a student, but actually when you learn and go into industry, that learning never stops. You lose those opportunities to kind of grow your knowledge. And obviously, as you mentioned there, a lot of companies have that kind of in-house training that they'll kind of help you go on, or sometimes kind of give you financial support doing those things. And I think there's opportunities to grasp as well. And that kind of moves that nicely on. I mean, what I would normally ask then is, are there any tips or advice you would give to somebody looking to go into your field? And perhaps, are there any sort of any pointers you would give in terms of routes in, things like apprenticeships or kind of training schemes that you think are useful about as well?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of things. So if I think about my industry, it's around that curiosity of mind. It's around taking opportunities, always wanting to learn, always sticking your hand up to ask for things. That's, opportunities don't just come to you on a plate. Actually, you have to ask for them. And I'll give you an example. So I was on maternity leave and found out my boss was pregnant. I was straight on the phone going, can I do her job when she's there and I'm back? And it's things like that you have to ask. So that's one of the things I'd say. The other thing is, I think in terms of routes in, it's not just around my career path. I guess there's quite a, through university and into a graduate program, actually there's a lot of apprenticeships out there. So I used to run an apprenticeship scheme through Experian, and we still have them in other areas, and they are absolutely fantastic. So people straight from A levels, we had quite a few people from the colleges in Nottingham actually, Coming in, doing 2 years, a rotation program. We supported their study as well. And actually, what was really great is we've had some individuals. I've got one individual who's now, after 5 years, fully qualified, working in London, and actually is probably going to be my boss, I would suggest, in 3 years' time. Absolutely amazing. I've got apprentices who actually finance wasn't for them, but they've gone into sales and procurement, and actually they've developed their careers in other ways. So it's really around actually in some ways getting that foot in the door. And I know lots of the companies in Nottingham and across Derby take on apprentices. We all, you know, it's so important, you know, that we will want our young people to develop, and we want to support you in your career journey.
Yeah, great. And that's really good to hear, because I think sometimes, you know, there's that kind of idea when you're a bit younger that you think there's kind of one straight direct route into what you want to do. So it's, you know, school, college, maybe university, and then you have this idea that you want to get this particular job, and this is how much money you earn, and within X amount of years, you're going to be at this level. But actually, it's about kind of keeping your, you know, an open mind for those different types of opportunities.
Absolutely.
I think apprenticeships are definitely one that are kind of overlooked sometimes. And I know that's something at the moment that kind of on a national level, the government are looking to push a little bit more. And I think you know, post-COVID, as we come out of things next year, I think that'll be, you know, there'll be a real push for that. But that's something at the college we can support with as well, if learners want to do that. I was going to speak to our team about that, if that's something that you're interested in. And as Helen mentions there, it's something that a lot of the larger employers do support people with as well. So definitely a route to explore if you haven't thought about it before. So just then in terms of your career, and often the answer to this is kind of, you know, no regrets, nothing I would do. And that's fine if that's the case. But I mean, is there anything that kind of so far you wish you had done differently? Any opportunities you wish you'd taken that you hadn't, or anything that you kind of picked up that you think is a bit of a pitfall that maybe learners should avoid? Maybe even if it's in terms of kind of priorities or time management or anything like that.
So it's a really interesting one, because you look back and there's roles you think, oh, I mean, to be honest, I was rubbish at some roles, and I know I am. But that's really important to learning experience. So actually, I think you shouldn't regret anything you do. That's always my mantra, but make sure you've learned something from it. And actually, when things don't go right, or when they fail, or you're not good at a role, that's a really great opportunity and actually makes you stronger for the future. So that's something to think about. I think, is there anything that I do regret? I think, you know, I think one of the challenges is you get more responsibilities as you get older, and it becomes harder. You know, so things like, I've got children now, and I'm really fortunate I can travel. I've got a very supportive family, but it does become more difficult. I think, you know, take as many opportunities as you can, you know, while you can, and the other thing as well is, and this is a terrible time, I remember the night before my Boots interview, which was probably the key role that got me on my journey. I was at university and there was a big night out planned, and I was this close to going. And so one of the fortunate things in my mind is actually I didn't go. And I think that's something to think about, is there's thousands of nights out. There are a lot of nights out. But if there's something the next day that's really important, you know, actually it's worth thinking about that, because actually my career could go in a completely different direction and wouldn't be as successful as I am today. I have had further nights out, you know, it's just a bit, you know, I think it's just things like that. It's really important to think about.
Yeah, and I think that's good to hear from somebody, you know, in that kind of position that you're in, that still it's about getting those priorities right at kind of those key times. And as you say, you know, there's a good kind of message these days that's forming as a lot of us are working from home about work-life balance. You know, I know we mentioned just before we started that there's this kind of thing that everyone spends a lot of hours in their spare room now or whatever working, but you still have to kind of put that separation in, be kind of, you know, before you start work, you've got to have your morning, you need to put time in for your lunch breaks. When work finishes, you kind of have to put the laptop away or whatever it is and kind of spend, you know, you have to kind of artificially almost put those things in where you're spending time with people, because it is really important. And on the same time, you know, obviously, especially with students, I know we're at that age where you really want to enjoy yourself. And of course, your free time is fantastic and a big part of that experience. But also sometimes there's times where you just have to kind of shelf that for a night or a week and put that hard work in, whether it's for exams or interviews or whatever. And, you know, and Helen here's a really good example of someone that's kind of can really see the benefit of that in hindsight. That didn't do that, went to the interview.
I was going to say, it's easy in hindsight, so
but it's good to hear it from somebody like yourself that's kind of at that higher level now. Students that actually, I know that we put these messages across, but actually it does really kind of, it does make a difference, you know, in those key times. So the same thing I always ask people as we kind of come to an end is, in terms of your industry, and maybe it's just something that's not really kind of specific to your role, but it might be something that you kind of find inspiring or motivating, or sometimes maybe it is, job specific. Are there any resources that you would say that students can keep on top of, in terms of, sometimes people have recommended to us websites or blogs, sometimes podcasts. We've had people recommend certain TED Talks and things like that. Is there anything you reckon that students would benefit from having a look at?
Absolutely. I think it's a few things. I think it's interesting. I listen to the TED Talk dailies, and they're about 7 or 8 minutes, because actually I go for a walk every single lunchtime, because otherwise I'd go mad sitting in my room every day. And I tend to listen to one of those, and they're about all sorts of topics. And I think that's really important, because actually, as you grow in your career, you become a manager or a leader. It's not just about your technical knowledge. Actually, it's really important that you understand people you work with, you understand, you become inclusive as a leader. And so that's what's really important for me. So I listen to those. I'll do a bit of a plug for Experian. We do, there's a Level Up podcast that we do, and a lot of our managers and leaders have done podcasts talking about imposter syndrome, in talking about some of the diversity programs that we have in Experian, and leadership. So they're really interesting. I listen to those to really get a different perspective on our leadership across Experian. The other things I would say on a more kind of technical level are, if you're interested in finance careers or IT or development, there's a lot of information out there around digital finance and technologies. And there's a company called Hackett. They do a lot of articles about that. They're really interesting from a finance point of view. I find them very interesting, but they tell you about what the future of technology is, what people should be focusing on. And, if I think about my career, I started off as an accountant, gosh, years ago. The accounting today is so different. The technology is different. And so you need to be ahead of the game. You need to understand. And actually, a lot of our work, a lot of my team are experts in robotics, experts in reporting systems. They're not just finance people anymore.
Okay, that's really interesting. I mean, one of the things you mentioned there, and I'm sure that kind of what will have caught the attention of a lot of students, is one of the kind of buzz phrases that's coming out from doing a lot of these videos is imposter syndrome comes up time and time again. And especially, speaking to people at kind of the higher levels in companies, and even the directorial level, people saying that sometimes they look around and think, I'm not really the smartest person in the room, what am I doing here? And actually, it's good to hear that, everyone feels like that sometimes. Especially from college or school into the world of work, you think, well, everybody around me knows what they're doing. I feel like I'm winging it a little bit. And actually, everybody feels like that sometimes. It's nothing to be put off by. And I think it's that message again, that actually, when you go into those situations, sometimes you feel like, oh, there's this fear of failure. And as you said earlier, even when there's failure, sometimes it's an opportunity to learn and grow. And actually, the people around you, they want you to succeed. They want you to do well, often because their success depends on your success as well. But people do want you to, they do want you to succeed and kind of bloom, and they want to support you in that. So I think that's something that's really good. In terms of the stuff you've mentioned there, we'll definitely link to that underneath. And it's good to hear as well that a lot of the larger employers now, and I know what, ones like Experian, Eon, Capital One, that students are seeing in Nottingham, familiar with, that they are starting to have their own kind of, a lot of them have got their own podcasts now and their own kind of programs as well that are kind of available for people to listen to externally. So that's really good, and it kind of ties in with what we're doing here as well. So I'm really glad to hear that that's happening on a wider level as well. Right, okay. So I mean, I know that you're very busy at the moment, so obviously I don't want to take up too much of your time, but just, for me to say, thanks very much on behalf of the students. You really appreciate it. And as I mentioned to you at the beginning, we may get some follow-up questions from students. So I may come back to you at some point with a bit of follow-up as well.
Really happy to. I mean, any questions, happy to answer them. And to everybody, thank you for inviting me. Really appreciate it, and good luck, everybody.
Yeah, thanks very much. Cheers, Helen.
Thanks a lot.